Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the Geneva talks that started yesterday between the United States of America, the Russian Federation and Ukraine. Here we have this picture where we can see the meeting started, but that was a trilateral meeting, and according to information we have, this meeting lasts for more than 4 hours. As a result of meeting, we received lots of very interesting insights, statements, so let's discuss them in details, and then we will try to understand what exactly are these teams, are these groups of people doing in Geneva, because as I understand, currently nobody understands for sure what exactly is happening there, what are they talking about, and what kind of issue they are trying to resolve for so many days and for so many hours. So the most important thing that at the negotiations in Geneva, Russia agreed to only 1 day ceasefire to organize and hold a referendum in Ukraine rather than the 60 days that Zelensky demanded. So the Russians are saying that we will not attack the territory of Ukraine, we will not carry out offensives along the line of combat contact, only during the day when votes take place. Another important thing is that Zelensky yesterday asked representatives of European countries to join trilateral talks between Ukraine, the United States and Russia, according to sources. This was reported by Kiev media. Earlier, it was reported that British representatives had unexpectedly arrived at the trilateral talks. Later, media reported that advisors from London, France, Germany and Italy were meeting with Ukrainian and US delegations in Geneva this evening. So most likely these guys came to Geneva just with one purpose: not to allow the head of the Ukraine's delegation team, Kirill Budanov, to sign something that probably won't fit the requirements and interests of Zelensky and of Ukraine itself, and of course of the European countries. So basically they arrived in Geneva just with one purpose: to control the Ukraine's delegation. Europeans are attempting to join the Geneva talks according to the Republica. Advisors from the United Kingdom, France, Germany and Italy are meeting with Ukrainians and US delegations in Geneva this evening. According to the publication, European representatives are monitoring the third round of peace talks. So they want everything to go according to the European plan, but not neither to according to Russia's or according to even Budanov's plan or something like this. Contacts have been ongoing for several hours and the work is being conducted behind closed doors. And the final statement that was made by the Rustam Umerov, he is probably the second person of the negotiation process. He stated that the first day of trilateral talks in Geneva concluded. After the joint session, work continued in groups by topic. Discussions focused on practical issues and the mechanism of possible solutions. Both the political and military blocs have completed their work today. We thank our American partners and many other different blah blah things. So by the morning of the 18th of February of 2026, at the morning, the second round of talks have already started. So now the most important questions: what are these guys are doing this here in Geneva? What are they doing there? What kind of issues they're trying to resolve, and what is the main problem? So as it was reported many times in the past, the main problem of the peaceful settlement of the conflict in Ukraine is the territorial issues. And according to media, according to different sources, this is exactly what the parties were trying to resolve yesterday during the first day of talks, and this is exactly what the Russian and the Ukraine delegations, with the participation of the United States of America, are going to resolve today. So, but it's nothing. It's just words without any specific data, what exactly they are doing. So I came to the conclusion yesterday after a very long analysis that both the Russians and the Ukrainians and of course the United States of America are working just with one simple question. And it's a simple question: what kind of question the Ukrainians, the Ukrainian authorities should use during the May referendum? So this is the main important question. Both the Russians and the Ukrainians are trying to create and to prepare the question that the Ukrainians in coming months would be asked during the referendum. So, and we see that there are two questions. So it's only the people of Ukraine, only the population of Ukraine can resolve the issue of Donbas. And to do this, the resolving of this question is possible only through the referendum. But to have a referendum, first you need to prepare a question. What kind of question are you going to ask the people of Ukraine? So that is why there are two questions. The first question was provided by the delegation of the Russian Federation, by the Russian authorities, and the second question was prepared by the president of Ukraine, Zelensky himself. And for example, the Russian question sounds like as following: do you agree, the people of Ukraine, that the armed forces of Ukraine will withdraw their troops and their forces from the Donetsk region? So yes or no? So this is the question that the Russians want Zelensky to ask the people of Ukraine during the upcoming referendum that most likely is going to take place in May. And Zelensky is saying that Ukrainians would reject any peace deal that requires Kyiv to give Russia full control of Donbas. Emotionally, people will never forgive this, never. He warned that if Ukraine simply withdraws and sacrifices sovereignty and the citizenship of the people who live there, the public would vote it down in a referendum. So Zelensky is trying to tell the Russians and the Americans the following thing: everybody wants peace in Ukraine. But imagine yourself the situation if we choose the Russian question on the referendum as a main question. Do you, the people of Ukraine, agree to that the armed forces of Ukraine will withdraw troops from the rest of Donbas region? And yes or no? And if this question would be chosen by Ukrainian authorities, and if Ukrainians, the people of Ukraine, reject and say no on the referendum, what does it mean? This will mean that the Russians will continue the special military operation, and the Russians will continue taking the rest of Donbas under complete control with military means, because the Russians are tasked at the beginning of the special military operation to do this. So that is why Zelensky is trying to outsmart the Russians and to outsmart Americans by playing with words and by saying that this question would be rejected by Ukrainians. They will never accept this situation. So that is why I propose, Zelensky himself, another question. And he says that my question is that, do you Ukrainians accept and agree to stop the special military operation, to stop the conflict with the Russians along the current line of combat contact? So Zelensky says that most likely the people of Ukraine will accept this question and they will say yes on the referendum. And this will lead to the situation that the war will be finished immediately right after the end of the referendum. So this is the main thing, and we understand that Russians will not accept this question on the referendum, because this question and the answer yes doesn't mean that Ukrainians will retreat from the northern part of Donetsk region, and which means that anyway the Russians would be forced to continue the special military operation and to take the rest of Donbas with military means. But there is one important difference, because most likely, the referendum in Ukraine will take place in May, and most likely the question would be the question that was proposed by Zelensky. The question would be whether Ukrainians accept the reality along the line of combat contact. Are you ready? Are you agreed to freeze the lines? This is going to be most likely the question, and Zelensky is going to use this situation to show that Ukraine is ready for a peaceful settlement of the conflict. And with this referendum, Zelensky will try to show that the Russians don't want peace, and that the Russians want to continue the special military operation and continue attacking Ukraine and taking territories with military means. Because you know that 2 months is already May, and already May of 2026, the weather is completely different with the weather that we can see right now in Ukraine. And then in coming months after the May, we will see elections, midterm elections in the United States of America, and in the end of the year, everything could be changed. The Democrats could return to the Congress of the United States of America, which means that Ukraine most likely would receive additional funding in 2027. So this is the plan, as I see, as I understand that, and this is the game that Zelensky is trying to play. So let's wait and see what kind of question, of course, would be chosen. But once again, I believe that the question that was proposed by Zelensky would be chosen as the main question for the referendum that most likely is going to take place in May of 2026. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground. The sources are saying that the Russians are preparing themselves for the next massive missile combined strike with drones and missiles. Most likely this time the Russians will attack Ukraine just with Iskander missiles. I would like to remind you that during the previous night the Russians were mainly attacking the territory of Ukraine with drones and cruise missiles of Ha-101 type. The next attack most likely would be the combination of drones and missiles of Iskander type, and probably hypersonic missiles would be used. The Russians will attack the territory of Ukraine within the next several days, according to different military experts. Furthermore, pro-Ukrainian sources published this map where we can see the total number of strikes between the 1st of February and the 17th of February of 2026 using ballistic missiles, hypersonic missiles, without cruise and without drones. So here we can see, for example, pink lines are the lines for Zircon hypersonic missile, orange lines are the lines for the Iskander missile strikes, and blue lines are the lines for Kinzhal hypersonic missile strikes. So these are the buildings and facilities and constructions that were attacked, that have been attacked by Russians since the beginning of February of 2026, and most likely this map would be updated in coming days or maybe even in coming hours. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground. During the previous 12 hours, we received lots of very important updates. Right before we started making this video, pro-Russian sources stated that as a result of clashes, the armed forces of the Russian Federation established complete control over the settlement by the name of Krynichna. So we haven't managed to update the map where we started making video, so we will adjust the map before the next video that would come that will be published in the evening. So but this is the reality, and this is something new from this direction, because from this configuration, from this perspective, we see that the Russians finished the battle for the foothold in the direction of the city of Orekhov. The Russians consolidated their positions along the railways between the settlement of Zaliznichna and Tsvetkova, and now everything is ready to continue offensive operation further in the direction of the settlement of Verkhnya Tersa. The battle for the settlement of Verkhnya Tersa is very important because control over this territory opens the Russians the further way in the southwestern directions towards the settlement of Orekhov. Russians will be able to attack the city of Orekhov from behind, which means that Ukrainians will have no chances to save control over the settlement if the Russians begin advancing exactly using these roads of attack. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Kostiantynivka direction. During the previous night, we received additional updates published by pro-Russian sources. And according to pro-Russian sources, as a result of clashes, the Russians improved their position significantly in the central part of the city, and the Russians forced Ukrainians to fall back towards the northern part of the southern part of the city of Kostiantynivka. So these are the changes on the ground between the dates. The Russian offensive operation in this area began somewhere on the 12th of February of 2026, when the Russians destroyed the last bridges, the last supply lines that Ukrainians used for logistic purposes. Here we can see how exactly the Russians destroyed those bridges, and when the bridges were destroyed, the Russians began advancing from the south, from the settlement of Bereztok in the northern direction. And this is how exactly the map been changed since the beginning of the 12th of February of 2026. As you can see, the front line collapsed, as we can see, and the most important important is that Russians answered the central part of the city of Kostiantynivka. Basically, the Russians answered the most fortified territory of the city, the Kostiantynivka citadel in the western part of the city. So probably a turning point. The Russians have passed the turning point in the battle for the city. Most likely in coming days we will receive additional updates from the southern pocket of the city of Kostiantynivka, because Russians most likely will try to continue advancing further in the northern direction with the purpose to get as close as possible the river of Kryvyi Tarets, and they will try to move in the northeastern direction, and of course with the purpose to tighten the news around positions of the armored forces of Ukraine in the southern direction, and which sooner or later will force the Ukrainians to fall back from this area in the northern direction of the city. So the battle for the southern parts most likely will be finished very, very soon. Now let's move further. As for the Slaviansk direction, during the previous nights we haven't received anything special, as well as about the northern directions. But when talking about the northern directions, the most interesting is coming from the Sumy region. During the previous 12 hours, we received lots of interesting updates. First of all, the Russians indeed improved their positions on the territory of the settlement of Kostiantynivka. Today, pro-Ukrainian sources published this video where we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russian soldiers in the northeastern part of the settlement, and based on this video we came to the conclusion that indeed the Russians began a counter-offensive operation in this area with the purpose to establish complete control over the territory. And another important update was published this morning by the group of forces North. This morning they stated that as a result of clashes, the armored forces of the Russian Federation established complete control over the settlement by the name of Kharkivka. So based on this report, most likely the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation will also confirm this information, and most likely before the next video we will adjust the map and we will color this territory under complete control of the armored forces of the Russian Federation. So today is a very interesting day. As we can see, today we will receive lots of updates from Geneva. Today we will see additional changes on the ground most likely, and today we will receive additional proofs that the Russians are finishing their preparation before the next massive combined strike that most likely is going to take place within the next several days. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.